Welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Julian Schirmer. I'm HEC Academic Director and co-founder of OAO, and I have the pleasure to be in our third interview today with the Group CDO from Pernod Ricard, Pierre-Yves. Welcome, Pierre-Yves.
Hi, Julian. Nice to be with you today.
I'm really looking forward to this third discussion. In the first discussion, we looked into the why of AI for Pernod Ricard. We understood that you have a really strong focus on marketing and distribution, and that you somehow need to deal with the complexity of having over 240 brands and being very global and selling all those wonderful brands like that you have in the market. And how do you deal with this complexity and leverage AI to do so? And at the same time, we talked then in the second interview about how do you make it happen, really focusing on a couple of use cases, embarking the people very early on, making MVPs, and then really trying to get them on board and then scale it and really over invest. This I found very interesting the last time. Over invest on the user experience so that people have a easier adoption. Now, this sounds all great, but I'm sure not everything has always worked fantastically, right? This is probably a journey of many mistakes and of many learnings, and also of probably a couple of things that you think are very interesting that others could copy. Could you share with us a little bit where you say, well, this is something that what we tried it and really didn't work out, and what you learned from it, and how this changed how you're approaching AI today in the company?
Yeah, so the main difficulties we've had on the different projects, so whether it's optimizing the marketing spend or optimizing the visits of our sales rep, has been about collecting data that we didn't have at the beginning. So, for example, we did have some data about the sales to the consumers because we are not distributing directly to consumers. We had it in the past, but not in a really organized way. And then what we identify is that we needed, for example, some weekly data of the sales to consumers and not the monthly that we had. And this has proven quite complex to the point that in some countries, for example, in Australia, we couldn't get at all that data from the main players, from the retailers. So we've had to stop some of the projects for that reason. Another thing we've had to stop because of data availability is when you want to optimize your marketing, you need to have 3 years of historical data. And in some markets, for example, if I remember well, in Mexico, for example, we couldn't get 3 years of historical data, even if we went through the emails, PowerPoints, the former agency, etc. And so we had to decide after a few weeks to stop the project, saying, okay, we'll come back in 2 years when you have enough historical data. So that's one of the examples where we had to stop in some countries. The other case where we almost stopped was when deploying the tool we have deployed for the Salesforce. In one of the country, the people were not following the recommendation. So usually we are 85% of recommendation. It was dropping to 20. And why? Because in fact, initially we went into places where the Salesforce have a limited geographical scope, like 20 kilometers by 20. And then we went to Germany, for example, where you probably know Germany, where there's a lot of big cities which are around all the country. And so lower density. And so the recommendations for one day, for example, it would have made people traveling probably 1,000 kilometers. So it doesn't make any sense. So we stopped actually, implemented an additional feature to group by geography the different outlets on top of the business rules, which is not an easy topic to do for those who work in data science. And so once we had cracked the way to do this efficiently, then we could deploy again. But that's one of the things you need to do on those projects, is that you're going into uncharted territories, new places, new ways of working. And so you need to constantly measure whether it's working and be able to say we stop, we pause, definitively, or for some time to make sure that then you get back to that part of adoption. So it means that you need all the time to be measuring your KPIs of success, which are business impact, which is the level of adoption. to make sure that you're on the right track on the projects.
That's fascinating. I know that this contextualization is always a big challenge, right? So I had one of the other companies was sharing a story of leveraging audio bots that help the salespeople while they are in the car driving to the client. Now the thing is, in Germany, this is easy because you're allowed to have the phone basically and talking to the phone, and you can have headphones. In Spain, you're not allowed to have headphones. And so this completely changes then what you're allowed to do. And obviously in Germany, you have smaller, shorter routes, at least for their business, while in Spain, you have longer routes. So it changed completely how you interact. So fascinating story of how to go about the contextualization. Now, you mentioned the importance of tracking from the beginning to see the success. Now, the problem with data and AI projects is very often that you need to do a lot of things before it gets started, and you will see the results after quite some time only. So, how do you deal with this? Did you have some experience there?
Yeah, so on the first part, when you're doing an MVP, a minimum viable product, you need to find ways to go quickly to the solution. So you need to take some shortcuts to get the data, even if it's not 99% accurate. You need to get some of the data quickly. So sometimes you need to reduce the perimeter. So it could be in the US to just one state. But you go fast, not solve everything for all the states in the US, just one. Make sure that you get to the result and don't go into the usual strategy in IT projects where you do the foundations first and then the first layer, etc. You cut through that until you prove that it works. So because as this is uncertain, people don't like uncertainty. So you need first to prove that it works, and then you will invest in the foundations and the different parts which are important for a project to run in the long term. So that's the recommendation, is really to do whatever is needed to go fast. So sometimes it might mean taking some off-the-shelf solution, even if you redevelop afterwards. Sometimes it's actually faster to develop internally than going through a process of request for proposal, then negotiation, then contract signing, etc. So one of the key criteria is go fast to the actual usage. And so here, taking inspiration from the startups, from the agile methodology, etc., is key for those projects because most of the time, little people in your industry will have done the same. The most experience that most consultants will have will be 1 year if you're lucky, 2 years maybe, but most of the time they don't have a lot of experience. And so it's unknown for a lot of people. And so the way to manage uncertainty is to go faster to the prototype, faster to the MVP. And this is when you prove the value, and then you can invest on the rest.
And so I love that approach. Now, if you think about you're since 20 years in the company that's now celebrating its 50th birthday, so congratulations on that. And you have since 6 years, you have this role of digital and AI and pushing that forward. If you look back to those 6 years, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Things I would have done differently, I think I would have involved the finance teams earlier. One of the things I've failed in the project is that we are focusing on sales and marketing, but it's interesting because we are creating new KPIs which are interesting for the finance. So, for example, in marketing, we are calculating now a return on sales, meaning how many euros do I get for investing €1 on the Absolut vodka in Germany? And that's super interesting for a finance team. And because we didn't involve them enough from the beginning, now I'm catching up and getting also that usage of a new smart KPI that didn't exist before by the finance team is taking me time. And I think they could have been involved more from the beginning and creating more adherence. So it's probably thinking beyond your direct users. What are the adjacent users that could also take advantage of the some of the tool, the information, the insights you are producing? So looking beyond your target could be better. So this is one of the things I would have done differently if I were to start again.
creating the right alliances in the organization to have a stakeholders report. Taking another look more from you as a person, there's a lot of people who would like to take a leading role within the data and AI space. Is there any tips that you could give them if they want to shape and have a career in the data and AI space in large companies?
So there's a number of things. The first one, you have to be curious because it's changing all the time. So you need to keep informed and understanding the different things. So keeping that curiosity will be key. So that's part of the core skills which are necessary. The other one is taking into account that the job is 70% about change management. We discussed it before, convincing people, explaining. I'm spending about probably 15 to 20% of my time on trainings. So sometimes it's not called trainings because for CEOs of entities, the CEO cannot train the CEO; they know everything already. So you need to find different ways of engaging, workshops, etc. But it's actually making people grasp, feel. So we've developed games for people to understand how things work in a simplified way, and so that part is really important. And it's change management, engaging. And for me, the job is also a mix of big data, that was the name of AI a few years ago, but also small data, because people need to understand the why. I need to understand the why. I don't know, there's a traffic jam. When I know that because there's I don't know, an accident in front of me, thanks to Waze, I'm more patient, it's better. So people want to understand the why. And a lot of time, those systems will give you insights. So things which are aha moments, saying, wow, I didn't know that. But then people want to know why are the consumers behaving that way. And usually the only way is to actually go on the field, in the supermarkets, asking real consumers, not just your friends from Saturday night, but real consumers of the brand. Why have they shifted? Why are they consuming those brands at the same time? Why do they having that brand in a bar close to a beach, which is really strange because usually we think it's consumed in a different way. And so this is why for me those jobs of working in the AI and data are really good, and you can work a lot of your life in Excel and nice charts, etc. But going into the field, understanding in your industry what's happening, why is this coming up on a report, is really important, and that helps to validate or invalidate. And sometimes you might have an issue in your data, in your modeling, etc. But it helps also to differentiate real insights from false positive or things like that. So my recommendation would be to keep so that curiosity, taking into the change management into account, and also that link with the real life, the concreteness beyond a screen that will display some of the information.
I love it how you frame it and portray it, Pierre, because I think very often from external perspective, people think data and AI is all about tech, but exactly this notion of saying you need to engage people. It's about strategy. It's about talking to customers. It's testing. It's a little bit entrepreneurial actually, what you have to do. So I think this is very interesting. So I think for all the audience, Pernod Ricard is a very interesting company. I think they do some really interesting things. So I think if they can reach out to you, Pierre-Yves, if they like to know more, obviously this would be fantastic. And I recommend everybody to actually have a closer look on what is happening behind the vodka brands of this world. And there's actually quite some fun data in the eye game that is going on. So thank you very much, Pierre-Yves, for this series on the why, how, and what from Pernod Ricard, and very much looking forward for our ongoing conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Julian, and looking forward for our next Jameson sour cocktail together.
Wonderful. Must be a standard goodbye in your company, no? You always choose a spirit and then love it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.